Welcome back, everyone. Third class of the day. We hope the two first classes were very insightful for you. Again, I want to remind you that all the sessions will be recorded and sent to you. And during the break, we talked about what to do with the unanswered questions, and we will get all of those answered. So we don't know yet if it's going to be a video or maybe a written document, but we will include it in the email with the session recording. So if your question wasn't answered, look for that email, and we'll make sure to include the answer in there. Good. So if there's anyone just joining us for the third class, welcome. If you just had a break, well, welcome back as we get ready to start our third and last class of the day. Yeah, Jasper, are you ready to kick things off for our last class today?
Yeah, for sure. I'm all ready. You can still hear me good? You can still hear me well?
Yep, loud and clear.
Yeah.
And I will pass it over to you so we can talk about end of life cycle.
Yeah, perfect. So again, thank you for joining us. Or maybe you're just got in, you've been here the whole time. Really appreciate it. So with the last class for today, we're going to talk about how you can uncover obsolete teams and the next steps for cleaning them up, which helps keep your Microsoft Teams up to date but also easy to navigate for business users. So what are the topics for this class? We're going to talk about how you can find obsolete and unnecessary teams. And of course, what steps you can take around the end of life process of teams like that. So we'll probably have some time. We'll probably have plenty of time for questions. So don't be shy and just leave them in the Q&A section. So let's start with finding obsolete and unnecessary teams. Why should you care about this? It's a valid question, I think. What can be the case is that inactive teams have sensitive content that needs to be officially archived or deleted. I mean, officially we mean by regulations. So, for example, in the Netherlands, and I think it's related to the European Union, you have to delete resumes of people who apply for a job but don't get it. I believe after 3 months or maybe a year, one of those two. So that means that, let's say there's an active team and there's some resumes of people who never worked for us. Yeah, you're basically violating, sounds very, but you're violating the regulations. So that's why you really should think about this topic and care about it as well. And of course, inactive teams also take up space. And of course, space is very relative, especially these days with all the terabytes that Microsoft is offering. So, don't look at it from that point of view, but look at more from like an administrative point of view, because you are responsible for managing your Microsoft 365 tenant. And if you have a long list of inactive teams, it will increase the time you have to work on certain tasks, right? Finding obsolete teams, managing the members, et cetera, et cetera. So that time can be brought back if you have a process in place that takes care of inactive teams. Follow-up question, how do I find inactive teams? Again, there are a couple ways of doing this. In the Microsoft Teams Administration Center, you have a usage section where you can see how people are using Teams, right? And for example, you can see the amount of meetings being held or the amount of files being shared, the amount of channels, et cetera, et cetera. One part of that you can also export. So you can basically see a list of teams that basically have barely any activity. There's no messages being posted. So then you can recognize that as an inactive team. Of course, no surprise, you can also use PowerShell, right? You can use PowerShell to find teams that are not active. Another option, and it kind of relates to one of the questions that was being asked, is you can use the so-called expiration policy from Azure AD. It does require an Azure AD Premium 1 license, so that's something to be aware of. But this is something we'll discuss a little bit in a couple slides from here, what that entails. And of course, there's a third-party tool like ShareGate Apricot that also offers this ability, and it's something Larry will discuss as well. So this is an example from the Microsoft Teams Administration Center. So at the left bottom, under Analytics and Reports, you have an option called Usage Report. You select the report you're looking for. So in our case, that's Teams usage. You can select a date range. I believe the maximum is 90 days. I believe you can also do 7 days or 30 days. You run the report. You run the report and then you see the immediate results. So you can also see the total active users, active channels, guests, reply messages, post messages. The numbers you see there is for all teams. But if you go to a specific team, you can see, for example, hey, there's no active users anymore. There's no post messages anymore. So that gives you a good indication of what teams are still active. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little Excel icon. That's where you can export it. So what is the Azure Active Directory expiration policy? So this is basically a policy that automatically deletes an inactive team in Microsoft Teams after a set number of days. The set number of days, that is something you determine as admin. I believe the minimum is 30 days, but then you can increase it. So it can be 6 months or a year or something in between. So what happens is if the policy is being triggered and it starts from the creation process of a team. So let's say your expiration policy is 6 months. Let's say I create a team today. 6 months from now, that policy will kick in for that team. Team owners, they're responsible. They're responsible for renewing the team. They will see in their activity section of their Microsoft Teams application, and the left top, you have the button activity. They will see notification there, but they will also see it next to the name of the team. And we added some screenshots so you can see what it looks like. That means that from the moment that shows up, they have 30 days to respond. Otherwise, the team and all related content is soft deleted. So all related content, that means the team itself. So with the chat, the SharePoint site that contains the files, maybe some pages, planner with all your tasks related to the team. Microsoft Stream is still being used to store recordings, and it has a group that's also deleted, and the shared calendar and the shared inbox is also being deleted. But they call it soft delete. So that means you have 30 days to undo the deletion, and only an administrator can do that. After those 30 days, everything is permanently deleted, apart from the team site that will still be accessible for 60 days. But only when you want to restore it, it will give you, it says like, well, I can't find the group related to it. So you can still access it. It's a little bit cumbersome, but it's still there a bit longer. The expiration policy, you basically set for all the teams in your Microsoft 365 tenant, a selection of those teams, or you don't apply it. We do advise using an expiration policy, but if you're using this one, know that you also have the option not to use it, right? There's something called an activity check that should help owners in a way that they don't have to renew a team that's actually being actively used, because it is kind of strange to receive a notification for example, department team that people are using on a daily basis with the question, do you want to renew this team? It's like, well, yes, because I work on it every day. So in the background, there's an activity check happening that checks if somebody visits a channel or if somebody does something with the document. So in this example, we call it editing, but it can also be sharing or creating a document. But in that case, the team should be automatically renewed for another expiration period. So I gave the example of, I think it's at 6 months. So let's say it kicks in, it sees this activity, it will renew it for another 6 months in that case. So this is what it looks like. So next to the name of the team, you see here a team called Project Demo. You see a little explanation point. And if I go over it, you'll actually see when the team is about to expire. Within the settings of the team, you'll see additional team expiration, where you can see, as per policy, your team will expire on the 25th. Contact your IT admin for more information on expiration policy. So if you're using this, people will reach out to you with a question like, hey, why is this? What is happening? And that's why, again, adoption is so important, because this is something you should have discussed with them during the implementation process of Teams, right? This is something you should have communicated towards your business users. especially to the ones who have the role of owners. And again, another example. So this I talked about the activity feed, and that is where you also see this renewal notification as well. So you can see that on the left side, it will say, hey, this Europe operation team is expiring soon. So what is our recommendation? Now, again, definitely implement a periodic review of your inactive teams, and we also discuss why that's important. And I mentioned this a couple times during all the classes, that you really have to educate your owners so they are aware what their responsibilities are in relationship. And now it's this process, but just in total, right? Because with certain power comes certain responsibility. I know it's a bit cheesy, Spider-Man line, but it is true though. So, but again, if you never told them, you can be angry at them that they maybe did something wrong because you never told them about the responsibilities and the impact of certain decisions, right? So please don't forget that. So now moving towards defining the end of life and what options there are and what you can do around this topic. Well, the end of life of a team is basically determined by the purpose of a team, right? Because, for example, if you have a department, probably there's not really going to be an end of life, right? Only when there's a reorganization within a company, or maybe the department becomes obsolete. But when will that ever happen? The chance of that happening is very slim, right? So those kind of teams probably won't have an end of life, right? The team itself. The content can have an end of life, right? For example, the resume example I gave, but we're talking now about teams, not necessarily about the content that's in them. So for the team itself, if it's a long-term team like a department, that's not really an end of life. But keep in mind, there is content that can have that aspect. There can be content that has to be deleted, for example. But most teams do have an end of life, right? Because again, the projects, like a project, has a beginning and an end. So what are your procedures within your organization to do after that project and end it, right? Are you just going to leave it there, or are you going to move it, for example? We'll discuss that as well. Work groups, brainstorms, these are all teams with basically like a short-term purpose, that something that you will have to think about, how are you going to deal with that end of life aspect of teams with that purpose. So yeah, it's nice, right? It's a nice flow. How do you deal with that, right? You can archive a team, or you can delete a team, or you can work with retention policies from Microsoft Teams. And of course, you can also use ShareGate Apricot, and that's something Larry will discuss as well. So let's first dive into the archiving. So Microsoft Teams has an option to archive teams, right? It's an out-of-the-box feature that you have to apply manually, and I'll show you a screenshot of what it looks like. The owner, or of course the admin, because the admin should be able to do that, he or she can archive a team, but it can also unarchive it, right? Once you archive the team, what it does, it puts everything in read-only. So nobody can add documents anymore. Nobody can add chat anymore, but everybody is able to look at the team, look at the content, the chat is being done, but you just cannot edit anymore. It's really set to read-only. Only the membership can be modified. So this is interesting. So what you could do in theory is archive a team, remove all the members, and just keep one or more owners. So at least, somebody still has access to the team, but you take away the permissions of the members because they don't have to do anything there anymore. That's an option. So how do you do this? So first of all, at the left bottom of the screenshot, you see join or create a team. To the right of that, you have a little wheel icon. If you click on that, then you will come into this screen where you see all the teams. So now, me as an owner can archive my teams by clicking on the 3 black dots and selecting archive team. It will tell you, ask you a question, do you want to do this, right? And it will tell you what will happen, right? Like I discussed. And then you also have the option to say, hey, make the SharePoint site read only for team members. So then everything is basically put to read only. You click on archive and it's archived. But the word archive can have different meanings with different kind of people, right? Like I work a lot with record managers, for example. If they hear the word archive, they think that the content is being moved to like an archive system. And that's not really what Teams does. Like they call it archive, but it's a lightweight archive, right? It still stays in one place. Everything is set to read only, but nothing really happens with it. So for people like that, especially organizations like that have to comply to certain regulations, and we notice this particularly in the government sector, and I'm talking my own experience in the Netherlands, so this could be different for the place where you live. They often have an archival system, like a DMS or record management system. They use these for regulatory purposes. I almost stumbled upon that word, so I'm not going to say it again, but that's what I use it for. And that's that scenario I have. They have to put content in there that has to be stored in there for 7 years, because that's what the regulations tell them to do. Like I told you, Teams keeps it in Teams. There's not really a solution to connect Teams to, for example, your DMS system or your record management system. That just doesn't exist. It would be great. I hope eventually something like that happens. Not sure, because again, we'll touch about what retention, we'll talk about it as well. That's what Microsoft offers, but you have to realize it doesn't exist. So you have to make your own custom solution. So we've done this, and we're in the process of doing this with a couple of customers, where the customer tells us, like, okay, we like to work with Teams, but we know Teams will have content stored that we have to preserve for, I don't know, 5-6 years, or content that has to be deleted after a year, but we already have a system for this. Can you please integrate? So we, a couple of my very smart colleagues who are developers, created a solution where a team has its SharePoint site. In the SharePoint site, there's an option to say archive, and then a signal is being sent to a record manager, and he or she gets that signal and says, okay, I checked all the files. These need to be archived, and they're copied to that archiving system. Sounds complex, but please, again, talk with your business and also mention this aspect, like, hey, are there files that need to be archived? And then you can see what the best solution is. Of course, you can also delete a team, right? There's no shame in deleting something, right? Especially if it has no purpose anymore, but you have to be fully aware that you can do that, right? So you can do that. You can permanently delete it. It will be gone forever, right? After those 30 days that I mentioned before. Again, I mentioned this before, but it's very important to realize this. Everything will eventually be deleted. The chat, the documents in the SharePoint site, the SharePoint site itself, Planner with all its tasks, the Microsoft Stream group, maybe with the recordings, maybe and all the shared inbox, the shared calendar, everything will be deleted. Doesn't have to be a problem, but you need to be certain that you can do that. This is what I mentioned before. You have that 30-day soft delete period, and again, after that, there's no way back. So again, we have some customers who also have some backup systems in place that that actually back up the content. Very rare, but be aware you can do that if you want to and if you need to often, because it's not wanting, but often if you need to do it. So the nice thing about that archiving in Teams is that at any point of time, the owner or the admin can undo it. So hey, I want to unarchive this team so you can reuse it again. So that's nice. And again, deletion is permanent. So you have to be aware of that you're 100% certain that you can delete the team and all its content. And it really depends on the content that exists in the team, right? Like I said before, sometimes for regulatory reasons, you need to preserve or delete certain content, right? And then you really have to look into the retention aspect that Microsoft 365 offers. So we talked about retention a couple times, but maybe you're wondering, what is retention? Like, what does it mean? So retention really revolves around the governance. So it's information governance of your data that relates to compliance or regulatory requirements. So GDPR or a couple of these other regulatories that exist per country. So that's really what it revolves around, information governance. But how does this work? Well, there are basically a couple options. In relationship, I'm talking about relationship to Teams, because retention within the aspect of Microsoft 365 is pretty broad. You can do a lot with it. So now we're basically focusing on the Teams aspect, right? So what you can do with a retention policy is that you can retain all the channel messages and or content for a specific period. A specific period can be days, months, or years. You define that. Or what you can also do is say, hey, I want to retain and automatically delete my channel messages and or content after the specific period of time, or retain it forever. So you can say, hey, people aren't allowed to delete stuff for a year, but after a year, it's automatically deleted. Or you allow people to delete stuff, work with all the content, it's fine. But after it's reached a certain amount of time, a year, for example, everything is automatically deleted, what the policy applies to. That's possible as well. So you have to think about your organization, your regulatory requirements, and then you have to apply your information governance, maybe by using retention policies for that. So what options are there for teams? Again, there's a lot of options around retention in Microsoft 365. It's a very broad offering, right? You can do a lot with it. But if you look at teams, you can apply one automatically. So you can define your retention policy with the options I just described, and then apply it to all teams or a selection of teams. That's what you see here. But in Microsoft 365, you cannot create one retention policy that retains the content and the channel messages. You have to create two separate ones. This has been like this for a while. Maybe in the future you can combine them, but for now you have to make two separate ones. It's no big deal, but be aware of that. And you can see in the screenshot that you can include or exclude. So you can, by default, it's for all teams, but you can also say, no, I want to do it for a selection. And the Microsoft 365 groups is used to preserve the exchange part and all the content part, right? The team's channel messages is pure for the messaging part. So what do we recommend? You definitely have to implement a periodic review of your inactive teams. And again, you have to educate your owners so they are responsible for this process part. So they know, again, they need to know what their responsibilities are. And like I mentioned before, if you delete something, eventually it's gone forever, right? So you definitely need to have a clear backup, but also a retention strategy. So you're certain. I wanted to say 100% certain, but ideally that you don't face an unwanted data loss. That people come back to you like, oh yeah. This document we need now, but it was 6 months ago we deleted our team. Can we have it? Like, no, because we weren't aware of that, right? So again, talk to your business, discover the compliance requirements, and then apply these policies. So we're going to wrap it up. So again, we have plenty of time for questions. You have to provide a periodic, but also a very user-friendly and efficient review process to discover and process your inactive teams. And please, please, please define a proper backup and retention strategy, because you don't want to be in a situation where people come to you as an admin and they're begging you, hey, I'm missing my content, it's been deleted. And they're starting to blame you because you're the IT admin, right? You are responsible, right? It's not a black and white, but please be aware of this so you can prevent a situation where data is deleted that should not have been deleted. So what we can do now, I think we have some time for questions. So I'll hand it over to you, Larry.
Wonderful. Perfect. Thank you, Jasper. Let's dive into some questions. We've got a lot of them still, so let's not wait. Let's try to answer as many of them as possible. We have I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this correctly, so I apologize. Syed. Jasper mentioned a tool which can be used for information architecture. Any name? Can you advise? I don't remember. You talked about Apricot. Did you talk about something else?
We did talk about the topic information architecture, but there's not really. I'm not familiar with a tool around that topic. I know there are some third-party tools who can help you with that. I just don't have any hands-on experience with it. Yeah. But I believe that question revolved around, let's say, if an environment that works with a lot of metadata. You have to apply your information architecture, but Teams doesn't do that by default. So then I gave the answer how you can resolve that by working with a provisioning solution that automatically implements your information architecture when people request and create a team. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sounds good. Pete asks us, is it best to use dynamic teams for owners and members of teams rather than tagging individual users as members owners?
I don't. Is that does it? Are you maybe that person can type it again? But are you referring to the dynamic membership of a team? Is that what the question is around, or maybe that person can give some additional info in the chat if that's possible?
Yeah, Pete, if you're still there, you can go ahead and maybe add some more details to help us. We want to answer your question, but we're not totally sure exactly what you mean by use dynamic teams for owners and members. So if you can give a little more details, we'll be happy to answer that question for you. Next question from an anonymous guest is: the team's usage report only includes teams with activity in the past 30, 60, and 90 days. How to find teams with zero activity if you don't know how to use PowerShell? Well, I guess the answer here is, well, I guess I'm preaching for my choir, but is use SureGet Apricot. You'll be able to see all that information very easily in the SureGet Apricot UI, and there's absolutely no PowerShell required. So, and that's why we built the tool, so that you have all that information at your fingertips anytime you need it. But is there any other kind of advice you would give for that, Jasper?
No, I agree. No, I have nothing to add to that one. No.
All right. Wonderful. We have Andras from for some of the admin tasks. We need Azure AD Premium. Example to hunt for expired teams. Is only one license enough linked to the admin?
I'm not a license expert because the licensing in Microsoft is like a very complex topic.
It's an expertise on its own.
Yeah, we have within InSpark we have 2 people working around that because it's so complex. So yeah, what I would recommend doing, and that often helps me, is go to Google. It sounds lame, but what I do, for example, is Google and I do Microsoft 365 groups. Naming policy or expiration policy, and then you get the page from Microsoft from Microsoft.docs, I believe, docs.microsoft.com, and there's always a section that refers to the licensing aspect. And to be fair to Microsoft, it's very clear these days there what the license implication is. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question. So I would advise first to take a look at do the Google search and then see if you can find it there. And otherwise, yeah, if your organization has a Microsoft account manager or something, somebody within a Microsoft within your country, he or she should definitely be able to help you out for sure. Yeah.
Right, wonderful. I just want to point out that while Jasper and myself are going through the questions, we also have Ellen who's answering some questions in the chat. So make sure you go back and see your question. It might have been answered by our very own Ellen. So just wanted to point that out. Next question from Janice. Azure Active Directory expiration. Will it soft delete the SharePoint site of the team as well?
Yeah, everything. Yeah, everything is soft deleted. And then because the SharePoint has a site collection recycle bin, and that one is 90 days. So then what will happen is the team will be gone after 30 days, but the SharePoint site will still be there for 60 days. Yeah, I believe you can restore it, but the group is gone. So you will just have the site without a group. So, but it does help you with maybe retrieving some content that should not be deleted after those 60 days. Yeah.
Okay. Next up is Stuart. If we have retention labels applied to documents, how would the expiration policy work with these?
Yeah, so retention always wins. That team will be deleted, but the content will be preserved in a location that an administrator can always access. Yeah, so that can work together. Yeah, but I'm talking about the content, right? If there's a retention on the channel messages, the team won't be deleted. From the top of my head, that was the case. But for the content, I'm 100% certain that the content is always preserved. The team is gone. With channel messages, I would have to look that up. So maybe I can answer that question later as well for that part of Teams. Yeah.
Okay. Next up is TJ from Colorful, Colorado. Is there a long-term backup for compliance reasons? And can you search Teams for e-discovery purposes? ShareGate Apricot does have a long-term backup, so there's no expiration on the backup, or I guess your ability to get those files and folders back to your environment. But maybe you want to speak to that in a more broader sense, Jasper.
Yeah, it's very important to understand that retention in this case is not a backup solution, right? Yes, it does preserve content, but with a proper backup solution, you can say, hey, I want to go back in time and that day and that time to retrieve my content. That's not what retention does. Retention only helps you preserving content for regulatory reasons, to preserve it and then delete it, but it's not a backup solution, right? So compliance retention is not meant for that, right? So that's why, again, it's important to review the default from Microsoft, the default, what I just discussed, the 30 days, if that's sufficient for you. And then to prevent data being deleted that should not be deleted, that's where retention is interesting. But if you really want to have a long-term backup solution, for example, Larry said Apricot as part of it, but if then you need to look into that, or maybe another company. So those are two different things. It's very important to understand the distinction and purpose of both tools, so to speak.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Next up is Pete asking, deleting a team supersedes any data retention policy? Question mark. If the policy says 7 years and you delete the team, is everything gone after 30 days?
No, retention always wins. So retention is in the top of everything. So if there's a retention policy, the team will be deleted, but the content will always be preserved. So you don't have to worry that will cancel, that will, the team will be gone, but your retention policy says now that type of content that maybe is in the team cannot be deleted. It won't be deleted.
Good. It makes sense, right? It would kind of defeat the purpose.
Yeah, well, but it's a valid question, because there's a valid concern as well. But retention always wins. If you go to again, it's kind of like, but if you go to Google and you Google, I believe it's called Microsoft 365 retention policies, they have a nice diagram where you can see, because it's a frequently asked question, but they have a nice diagram around retention and deletion and expiration. So I would recommend taking a look at that as well. Yeah, it helps. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Bruno is up next. Is there a way to apply a policy that archives or delete a team after a determined amount of time?
For deleting, you have the expiration policy. For archiving, I don't believe there's an out-of-the-box solution for that. No. I'm also not certain if you can use PowerShell for that, but I'm not familiar with the whole list of PowerShell command lists, so you can take a look there. Maybe there is one that does something with the archiving that Teams offers that you could check that out. But those are basically the only options you have.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ShareGate Apricot will allow you to archive, but it's not going to archive automatically. It's going to tell you that the team is inactive. You can take action over it yourself, or you can automate the process with your owners, so they can be the ones who decide to archive it. But it's not like there's an automatic kind of expiration where it's just automatically archived.
Yeah. So definitely. Yeah, definitely talk to your back home we call it the CISO, like a security. What's it again? CISO. I always forget what the abbreviation stands for. But that person, he or she, should know all your regulatory requirements. So that person should know what kind of information has to be preserved or has to be deleted. So that person, in combination with like a record manager, right? Those two people those are the people you really have to talk to about this topic, and then use an IT admin can help them out from a technology perspective, right? What Microsoft offers, for example, or third party like Apricot, like ShareGate Apricot. Yeah.
Cool. Our friend TJ from Colorado is back with another one. Can content span multiple teams? I have a document in one team, but another team needs it also. What does the back end of that document look like?
Well, the document is always stored in one location. But so what you can do is create a copy, but then you have a copy, so that will be two, they're not identical anymore. So that's what you can do. You can copy it. What maybe is a better solution is to create a link to the document. So if you go to a SharePoint document library, you click on new, there's an option called, I think, link or something with link. Then you can select that one, and then you can enter the URL of the document in the other team. And then people in that, so you always have one version, but then people in other teams can just click on it and the document will open if they have permissions to it, of course, because that's also important. You need to make sure they're allowed to open it. But I would go for that option. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we had it's not a similar question, but we had a question where you touched on, where you said that not necessarily all the content should necessarily be in a team. So you were talking about some content should be accessible more times, like a communication site where it's accessible to everyone. So depending on that, if other people need to have access, if in a broader sense, well, maybe perhaps that document should live in somewhere somewhere that's not hidden for a small amount of people if it needs to be consumed by other folks. So I guess it depends on your situation.
Yeah. If once you find out that this document should be accessible for a broader audience, then it's a wise idea to look at maybe the internet portal or maybe some other public-facing site that's accessible for more people. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Good. We have Jos. Sorry if I am not pronouncing this correctly. Can you prevent team owners from deleting a team on their own? Or can you at least be informed when an owner deletes their team?
This is a question that gets asked a lot. No, you cannot prevent it. Are you able to be notified? That's a good one. I'm not with the out of the box options. Ooh. No, I don't think there's a way to get notified. That's why I keep emphasizing the importance of educating your team owners about their responsibility. Well, I get the fear that people delete teams. Maybe they should not do it. But again, how often will that happen? Because if there's a team with multiple members in it, they will notice that the team is gone, right? So then, it will be very rare if that slips through. But everything can happen, of course. But I think it's very rare. Yeah, you cannot just, how do you say that? You cannot use technology to prevent everything. There's also always people involved, right? So that's where adoption comes forward, like educating people, communicating to people. I understand it would be nice if it's there, but I don't think that's the end solution. I don't think that, no. I get it, but I don't think that's the way forward. You need to empower your business users, and it comes with certain responsibilities. And you as admin always have the ability to monitor and to restore, and that's why we keep emphasizing also that importance that you apply reviews and that we offer recommendations around tools. I think you should look more into that area than looking into a block of people not being able to delete their team, for example. Yeah.
Okay. Next up from an anonymous listener, what does the archive/delete function look like in Microsoft 365? As an example, a deleted team will still have a SharePoint site in the recycle bin for 93 until permanently deleted. I'm guessing that's 93 days.
93 days.
Is this what we would see in either?
Well, the presentation contained the screenshots of what the archiving looks like. If you want to see a team that's been deleted, oh man, I think you can see it in the admin center of Microsoft 365. I think you can see it there. But yeah, to restore it, you have to use, top of my head, I believe you have to use PowerShell to get it out of the recycle bin. Yeah.
Okay, so once it's in the recycle bin, you need to use PowerShell to bring it back.
Yeah.
And that would be the delete function, correct? Because the
Yeah,
archive
that's
function.
sorry, that's delete. Yeah.
Yeah, but the archive function would necessarily just like leave it there, but it would be as read only.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. I don't know. Let me see if I have that. Yeah. So what? Yeah, I don't have a screenshot, but maybe you do. No, this one. So then you will see a little lock icon. So then I will have a lock here. I believe it's here, so people see it's archived. That's what it looks
Yeah,
like.
I think it's in a separate section. I think you can see your archive teams kind of like under the other ones, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Sunny asks us, any recommended Microsoft 365 backup solutions?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple. AvePoint and Veeam. Those are the ones I'm familiar with. What I would recommend is looking at a couple, and then asking for a demo and the licensing, because you have to realize they will store your content. So that means they have, it's all in Azure, so they also pay for its storage, so they invoice you. So you have to. What I would advise, take a look at the couple organizations, couple companies that offer it, like Veeam, AvePoint. Ask for a demo, and then also ask for the price, the pricing. And then it's fine. We have some customers to do it, but that's why it's so important to review what Microsoft offers and then discuss internally: is that sufficient? No. Are there maybe other ways to prevent stuff from being deleted? No. Okay. Now then we have to look into a backup solution. Yeah. Then it's up to you to make an informed decision. Yeah.
Great. We have Renga, who asks, can we add AD group as a member of a Teams? Does Teams have the ability to verify the numbers of an AD group?
There is, you can add an AD group. So let's say you have a team, you add members, you are able to select an AD group, but what it will do, it will check who is all part of the group, add all those people as member of your team, and that's it. So that group, because currently you cannot have a group in a group. That's not possible. So that's only, what you could do is like add that group and like, okay, and now I know those 50 people are being added, but that's it. Like there's no, let's say more people being added in Azure AD, it won't add them anymore to the team. It's just a one-time thing, basically. Yeah. So, but if you want to use like AD groups, you can use them in the SharePoint site, but it doesn't impact the membership of the team itself. So, that is a request we see, not to us, but to Microsoft. I see a lot being able to combine Active Directory groups with Microsoft Teams, for example, in that manner. Because basically what happens is this can be a little bit annoying. So let's say you have an organization that has a lot of AD groups ready, right, for all departments, whatever teams. So let's say departments, and then you want to implement Teams. Maybe you already have, you probably have a group in Azure AD called HR with all the members, but now you're creating a team called HR. And what will happen is a Microsoft 365 group is created. So it basically means you have a duplication. There's not really a solution for that yet. No, not yet. No, I wanted to say something, but I can't. But there's not a solution for it yet. No.
Okay. Did I read that one already? No, I don't think so. So Shelly asks, is there a way to restrict a guest to be limited to the team their access was originally requested for? Prevent an owner of a team from adding a guest to another team.
Can you repeat it one more time?
Yeah, so is there a way to restrict a guest to be limited to the team the access was originally requested for? So prevent an owner of a team from adding a guest to another team.
Okay.
So I guess that's twofold, because we're asking, is there a way to restrict a guest to be limited to the team the access was originally requested for? I believe that's how it works. I guess in a Teams, do they have access to other teams?
No, so let's say I have a team and I invite a guest.
Yeah.
That person will only get access to other teams if he or she is being added to that team. But then if the question is, can I prevent that? No, because that once you add a guest to a team, that guest is being added to your Azure Active Directory, marked as a guest, of course, but that means from that moment on, that person can be added to different teams. So that's why the responsibility lies with the owner. I don't no, I'm always 100% certain there's not a way to block that. No, because if you don't want that, then you could use labels to prevent certain teams from adding guest users. Yeah, maybe that's not also what you're looking for, because you just want to prevent that one person. Yeah, that's not possible. No.
But can you prevent it on a Teams level? So if there's, for instance, maybe the question is like, we don't want guests to be added to a specific team.
Yeah, that's possible.
So you can control that at the Teams level, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So if you don't want that person to be invited to a specific team, then you might want to, you can change that setting in the Teams administration center, right?
Yeah, but you cannot say I want John Doe, but not Jane Doe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. I think we've got a good question, one that we hear a lot. Can you please help me differentiate between Teams versus SharePoint team sites in 2 lines, because both serve the same purpose with the elevation of features within Team itself?
So the difference between SharePoint and Teams?
Or team sites? Team
sites, yeah. Well, I don't think I can do this in 2 sentences. Let me
do your best.
Yeah. No, so you have to realize that all content, so documents, is automatically stored in a team site that comes with the team. Because I don't think I don't have a slide handy, but the moment you create a team in Teams, a lot of things happen. Yeah. So a Microsoft 365 group is created. So you have a centralized membership, right? So people are being added to the group. You can define as owner and member. But from the moment, there's one part, but in the other part, multiple services are being activated. One of them is a team site. So that team site should be seen as the content management part of your team. We will store documents there. But you, for example, can also use it to store information on knowledge pages. So for example, we have an expert team for compliance. We chat with each other in Teams, but I also created a lot of knowledge pages with, like, where can I find more information about DLP, retention, what templates do we have? So it's like a nice SharePoint page, and I integrate that in Teams through a tab, but it's stored in SharePoint. So they're just intertwined. They're not 2 different things. Like Team is basically your interface over the SharePoint site. Because if you go to files, this is definitely not 2 sentences, but if you go to files, you'll see it looks like SharePoint, right? Almost. So that they're just intertwined. They belong together, because without SharePoint, you cannot store any content. Yeah. SharePoint communication site, that's its own thing. Like, that's for the public-facing communication, like an intranet. And a team site is for collaboration. But if you want, so everything is stored there, documents, whatever. So Teams is just a layer over that, allowing you to view the content stored in the team site. So that's basically it. This is what you said. It's a very common question. But I think what does help is that Microsoft is improving that Files tab, so you can see it SharePoint. So you're like, oh yeah, this is where SharePoint is, where I store my documents for my team. Yeah. I hope that helps. It's not 2 sentences, but I hope the explanation helped.
Yeah. Good. I think that's all the time we have. There's just a few little questions left, but I think we're going to have to include those in our recap. As mentioned earlier, the questions that we weren't able to answer, we will include answers to those questions in the email we'll send with the class recordings. So you can look at the classes and also check if your questions was answered, or look at other questions from other people that I think is still very valuable. Yeah, thanks for joining us today. We hope this was insightful. Go ahead and share your feedback with us. You can let us know on social media, on Twitter at ShareGate Tools. You can follow us, and of course follow Jasper if you if you want, Jasper, you can put the little contact slide if you want, if people want to be able to see. There we go. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed. We are going to include a little link in the chat for those of you who are interested in learning more about ShareGate Apricot, or also giving it a little trial. We've got a free 30-day trial. If you already have a ShareGate desktop license, this is included in your subscription, so there's no reason not to try it out. Because if you're here today, clearly you're having some little challenges with Microsoft Teams. So go ahead, give it a try. And yeah, thanks a lot for your time, Jasper. I think that was great. I think everybody enjoyed. We got some good comments in the Q&A section. And yeah, hope you had fun.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Really appreciate everybody being here and participating in all the questions. And I hope you learned a lot today. And hopefully we can see each other soon in the near future in an event maybe. Thank you. And thanks, Larry, for the opportunity, of course.
Of course, anytime. Thanks, everyone. And we'll be in touch shortly. And you all have a great day.